Hi, my name's TechDave, and today we're looking once again at what I thought was my 10th video, but actually my 9th video, on my delightful T430 ThinkPad by Lenovo. We're going to dive into some specs. We're going to talk about Linux primarily in this video. It's sort of the part 3 to my ultimate eGPU setup 2021, so 2 years later. And I've been avoiding doing this for ages. It's taken me 5 days to get to where I am now. So let's dive in, and I'll talk you through what we've got set up and the specs and what I'm going to do with it. Let's zoom out first of all. Just look at the state of my studio. So this is a wall of equipment. This is my gaming and video editing setup. This is my music performance area, which I use with the P51. So there is a video coming about the P51. Hang fire for that. It's I've got now in my Lenovo Legion boost station, I've got the RX 6600 8GB RTX the 1080p card. It's pretty cool. This is my docking setup for that, for when I do music, and then over there is video editing and gaming. And then I've got kind of a wall of instruments and stuff. People always tell me to point out that sort of stuff. So we've got an SG, we've got an Ibanez BTB, we've got a Music Man Copy by Vintage, I've got a Gear for Music acoustic, I've got 8-string guitar by LTD, so it's like an ESP, the Epiphone sort of version of ESP. I've got my custom modded Tobias Pro with upgraded electronics, and it's tuned EADGC-F, so an extra high F string as opposed to a low B and a high C. Got my acoustic, a little Mark bass amp, and all this sort of stuff. And all of this is integrated into one looping setup, so that's why there's so much equipment here, so I can live perform a whole set. I'll try and put in the cards here if I remember an example of that. I've also been learning the clarinet. But that aside, we've also got a massive stack of computers that I need to strip for a friend, so that's all by the by. This is what you're here to see, because this is what you clicked on the title for. It's the T430. Now, I've run through the specs in previous videos, but I'll do a brief overview. Let's get this curtain pulled over. As you can see, I'm watching a bit of Aesthetic Lo-Fi. It's a great channel. Check them out. That's still not working, is it? Okay. So Aesthetic Lo-Fi, nice chill tunes. Got it on mute so I don't get copyright infringement, and I want to respect that IP. So T430. We've got the i7-3840QM. We've got 16 gigs, 2133 megahertz, HyperX, I believe. HyperX DDR3, and then in here we've got my RX 480 with the EXP B stock with HDMI extension running out around here, so that I can connect the eGPU. It's not currently attached at the moment. I'm going direct into the TV, which is a lovely Panasonic 42-inch thing that I got for free. Sick. And then in regards drives, so I don't have the discrete graphics built into this. It's just the Intel HD 4000, which is cool because that means I don't have to disable it. I do want one with that. Feel free to contact me to donate one with the correct install of the NVS 1000M GPU if you want to trade or sell or buy. I don't really care. And then in the main drive bay, I've just got my Windows 10 Pro install on a 240 gig SSD. In the DVD drive bay, which is actually this side, we've got a 250 gig SSD with batocera Linux with my full ROM set of up to 2000 ROMs, some of which are stored on this external 500 gig USB 3 hard drive, which is just in there, that little CIT caddy. And then in the mSata bay, we have what I'm running now. I've got a 1 terabyte mSata SSD, which I thought was broken and then magically worked. And we are running, after a lot of trial and error, a lot of things not working, we are running PopOs, which is cool. And we're on the, probably shouldn't show you all of this, but yeah, it shows the system specs. as listed. It says 1.5 terabyte, but it's actually just 1 terabyte. I don't know why that's probably the total disk capacity. It's PopOs version 22.04 long-term support, 64-bit. GNOME version 42.5 and Windows System X11. So it's basically just a bog standard non-NVIDIA ISO burned version of PopOS. Now I've installed a bunch of games that run really well, and probably the next thing I'll show you before we go into it is there's a script that I downloaded. Oh, didn't expect that to happen. There's a script I downloaded for it that, in a nutshell, it's built for Thunderbolt devices, but it seems to work with the EXP stock. The rough gist is you install it, and then at boot, the xorg config file checks, is there an eGPU attached? If there is, it defaults to that as the primary GPU, which is like, it took me 5 days to find a way to make that work, and I couldn't get it working on Garuda Linux, which we'll talk more about in a minute. So it was such a relief when I managed to find something that worked for A, the EXP stock, B, so that the primary GPU was the eGPU. And the other cool feature with that, as I'll show you in a minute, is that I already explained it, that it makes the primary GPU the eGPU, which is like, you wouldn't believe how annoying it was that wasn't the case on Garuda Linux, because I worked for ages. Let me switch back to the other camera. I had I'll try and put some pictures on screen or reference it in a bit, but I installed like 600 gigabytes of games on Garuda, and then the eGPU wouldn't work. Couldn't get it to be the primary driver, a GPU adapter. So what was happening was the Intel HD 4000 graphics were feeding into the eGPU, using that as like a video adapter, and then that was going up there. So I was getting 36 frames per second, which was actually kind of impressive given that's the pipeline that was happening. 36 frames per second in Counter-Strike, and then it boosted the Counter-Strike source specifically, so make that what you will, but it boosted it up from 36 frames per second to 260, and like I was like, yes, huzzah. So what should we do first? We're probably going to jump into some gaming benchmarks, I suppose. I might run through a little bit more explaining stuff, but I've already done 7 minutes, so I think that's everything you needed to know. So we'll just jump into how it performs in general with an eGPU. So let's find out the answers to those sort of questions. So quickly before we move on, I've got the laptop set up currently with 3 operating systems. So you can see here we've got KingFast, that's a 1 terabyte mSata SSD. Windows Boot Manager is affiliated with the SanDisk 240 gig, which has got Windows 10 Pro on it. What I wanted to show you quick is what's on the 250 gig SSD, which is basically, I cloned my arcade machine and all my games. Now this does not feed the eGPU well, so I'm going direct out of the laptop there using the DisplayPort to HDMI adapter. We got batocera, so I'm not going to have the sound on, but I've got, just to show you around, I've got Ethernet coming into the 4377 dock, or 4338 because it's got USB 3, and I've got the audio coming out into my beastly stereo. But I just realised I need to switch the display out. So I've got system settings. I've got the controller set up as well, so a PS4 controller, and I'm only getting about 15 frames per second on the eGPU. So I've tried a few different things to get the eGPU to work, but it's just really bad. But it seems like they're showing you all the games I've got on all the systems, but it seems to work, doing everything I need it to do. These are all my ROMs that I scraped from my disc games. And then what can I show you? San Andreas, nah. Metal Gear Solid 3. And I've got the FPS overlay there as well, which will show you briefly. Oh, that normally works. Okay. But yeah, for example, on the eGPU, I was getting 15 frames per second on the main menu of batocera. Now I'm getting 220 somehow. So I don't quite understand the mechanism behind that. But we have if I go to all games, you can see I've got $2,971. Now, I've got a bit of configuration to do with this. This isn't the main point of the video, because I cloned all the files and installed the operating system on this SSD from my arcade machine. So I just wanted to briefly show you batocera. Runs on the Intel HD graphics and seems to work pretty well. Although all my BIOS files and stuff seem to be messed up, so that's why it's not working. Let's just try one more. This is a great game, Rogue Galaxy. Let's see if it loads. I may need to do some cheeky configuration. No, okay, so I'll get a game working and then be back. So the issue was, this hard drive, it's got a 500 gig. This hard drive caddy's got a 500 gig hard drive inside it that contains PS2, Wii and Xbox games. And it hadn't been picked up, so we can actually play with full correct controller mapping. It's not showing me the FPS for some reason, but it is playable on the integrated graphics, so that is enormous progress. I'm not going to make you sit through the intro. Let's just see if I got any save files. No save files. Okay, let's delete my save files from the other one, but that's fine. But basically you can see that it works. I'll play a bit of Snake versus Monkey. So this is just running on the Intel HD 4000. I do have 16 gigs of RAM in there, and I've upped the VRAM allowance in batocera to 1 gigabyte. So it seems to be able to run fairly flawlessly. So let's have a look what it performs like in game. I did select it to have the overlay of the FPS, but it doesn't seem to be included. You can see it's got the nice, to draw it to the original resolution, it's got these like bezels, although you can upscale easily on this to 1080p. It's actually at 50 Hertz, so that's why you're seeing that refresh happening. So yeah, there's that anyway. And then, what else have we got? We got a ton of stuff basically. My Steam library doesn't seem to work yet on it, but we'll get to that. But yeah, I just thought I'd show you this working basically, before we move on to the main star of the show. Oh, sorry, I just realised my fingers have been in shot. The main star of the show, we've got PopOs on the other SSD, so we're going to reboot into that with the eGPU attached. So I need to shut this down, and then we'll move over to capture on the P51 so you can see the performance. I'm going to try and find a Linux-based FPS counter refresh rate, but if that doesn't work, it'll just be Steam games, because Steam displays my refresh rate, the frames per second anyway, so we'll see how we get on. Wish me luck. So, ladies and gentlemen and non-binaries and all the folks in between. First game. So, this is Valheim. Running with Proton 8.2.04. These are all my settings that I've got in-game currently. I'm getting like 80, so I could probably bump up a couple of these, but in general, it's actually not that well optimized again, so we need to think about. Like it's fairly optimized. I'm used to playing this with a controller as well. But as you can see, we're getting wildly varying frame rate depending on the environment. This is just a little test server that I've got set up for private play. So I've made some delightful things. Oh, the button prompts, we need to change them quickly. How do we do that? Controls, alternative glyphs, so you go into the main menu and then it gives you the correct PlayStation button prompts, apparently, but that's not worked. Let's try one more time. Oh yeah, you have to press square or X to apply it, there we go. And then it runs pretty well. We got over 60 FPS, even in like quite a complex area where there's a lot of building. I'm happy with the performance. It's not bad. Like, I've got a comparable system that I've run this game on before, which is my desktop with 32 gigs DDR3 1333 megahertz. It did have the graphics card that's with this setup, the RX 480, and also the same generation i7, so third gen i7, slightly higher clock speed, and it smashed this out of the park on Windows. So, but I'm still very pleased to see it works pretty flawlessly on Linux. So this is enormously pleasing. We're definitely over the 30 frames per second playable frame rate sort of window, so that is good. Let's chop this beach down. Anyway, yeah, so that's the first game. So depending on the area, you can see we're going up into the 70s and 80s now, in more open land with less building. We could lock it down to 60 frames per second very easily, and it should be able to sustain that most of the time. Probably dip down to 50 at times, but it's still pretty cool. Not quite responding correctly with the button prompts, but yes. So there's the first game. You saw my settings, you saw the frame rate. I'm using Proton 0.2.4. Proton Experimental did not work with this, which is my global setting for Steam. But we're going to dive into some other games and check out some frame rates as well, so I'll be back with that. So a quick note, if you are using the T430 with an EXP stock on PopOS, or really any Linux distro, as far as I can tell, but this solution here that I'm presenting is primarily for Ubuntu based distros, because I know for a fact it works. So you go to eGPU.io/forums and then /Thunderbolt-Linux-setup and then /exorg-conf-generator-and-switcher. Do the link to it here, which should be opening. So from here, Novel Notion X switcher. You clone the repo, make setup @-h executable with chmod. I didn't have to do that. I just ran setup @-sh as root, and then you reboot and it does work. And you can see if I do neo fetch that it is including the Radeon graphics. So it means that basically if you don't do this, it uses the integrated graphics and then uses the, I think I talked about this earlier in the video, uses the eGPU as a sort of video adapter pass-through thing. So it's definitely worth just having a look into this if you're doing it. It is built for Thunderbolt, but it seems to work because it's based on a PCI ID, like that, as it says here. It basically works anyway, even though it's designed for Thunderbolt. So let's just minimize that, get rid of that, quick code. That's what we're going to play next, by the way, so we'll be back in a minute with that. So that's just a little bit of info to get the eGPU working as promised. So I apologise, in the earlier section when we were playing Valheim I said the wrong Proton. Basically it was 8, so to get the Metal Gear Solid The Phantom Pain working, we're using Proton 6 now. I'll show you the settings it's given me. It's not under there, is it? It's given me 1080p, frame rate auto. These are my settings, so you can pause and sort of explore them at your leisure. basically high settings, so we'll see how it performs in game. I haven't got very far through this game, so, but that's absolutely fine. I really do intend to get far through this game, but I just haven't. 1%. Resume game. So what have we got? We're on a big rock. Motion blur is functioning perfectly well. So we're getting around a console-like frames per second. You just about make it out in the top left, depending on how big a device you're watching this on. About 40 frames per second on high settings. I can't remember how to do anything in this game. What I was doing last time I played it. If we just spin, see it's that 40 frames per second sweet spot on high settings, so it's very playable, and honestly I'm kind of pleased with the performance on, no, not offline mode, that's not what we wanted. We wanted to return to titling. Right, so yeah, 40 to 50 frames per second seems to be completely viable. Play wise, it's smooth, it's playable. So we'll move on to the next game, which I haven't decided what that is yet. So yeah, for Metal Gear Solid: The Phantom Pain on T430 with RX 480, we're looking at Proton 6 for it to work, and it's Proton 8 for Valheim, and then we'll see what we get on with the next game. Hello, the next game we've got is Half-Life 2, but we're running the, I believe it's a community update, but I'm not entirely sure. It's these are my settings it's given me, just on face value. I'll have a moment to explore. It's called Half-Life Update, is what I'm playing. So it's a version of Half-Life 2, but with updated textures and various things like that. So we're just going to see how it performs. The normal Half-Life 2 we'll compare to in a minute, but in this we appear to be getting up in the 80s and 90s, which is nice. We've got no audio again for copyright reasons. Let's go through here, see if this works. So yeah, you can see we're in the hundreds of frames per second, so we could probably bump that up a little bit. Let's see what we got. Very high, let's go with as high as possible, I think. Bump up the anti-aliasing. See if we can make it pretty. Does it crash the game? It crashed the game. Oh, that's annoying. Okay, that didn't work. I was just watching videos in between. Never mind. But yeah, it was running perfectly well on the recommended settings, and then we could probably move on to the next game. I tried to get the Halo Master Chief Collection working, which did work before in this system, and for some reason it's not now. But you have, if you're trying to get it to run, you have to disable the anti-cheat stuff, so you have limited access and you can't do multiplayer, but it is playable. So I'm going to find another game and be back to show the performance of that. And with another source game, we're booting into Counter-Strike source. So I was just going to quickly run the benchmark test, probably. And let's see, so what video settings have we got? We've got these video settings. So again, have a moment to pause. And then I won't make you watch this video stress test, so I'll pause and then show you the results. And as you can see, we've got 257.5 frames per second. So that's very playable, 265 frames per second. Now, so moving on from this, I'm going to go over to Lutris. Now, I've been trying to install Mango Hood all day and it doesn't work. So Mango Hood is a frames per second counter. I tried installing Go Overlay, I tried doing an old version of Go Overlay. I've got Mango Hood installed, but I can't get it to actually work with any of the software I've got. So these will have to just be visual representations, and I'll have to tell you how it feels, but I'll show you some games running and do some benchmarking, because I'm going to do all 3 Tomb Raider games, for example. So I'll be back with the reboots of all the Tomb Raider games. So quickly, just to show you, these are the three launchers I've got. So we played Steam. Heroic Games Launcher I had some difficulty with, but Lutris seems to be the sweet spot. So I've got my GOG Epic list there. I've got my Origins not signed in GOG list there. I can't for the life of me get any of my GOG games to install. So hit me in the comments with some little like tips on how to do that. But what I have been doing is just launching the Epic Games Launcher as a standalone thing, and launching the games through that, and that seems to work perfectly fine. And I've done some configuration. So, for example, what did I change? I changed the version of Wine. I said use discrete graphics, manually selected my RX 480, and then all the games that launched through it use the RX 480. There's probably a bunch of stuff I don't really know what I'm doing with this, but let's just see what happens. Hold on, let me pause because I realised I messed something up. I'll be back in a sec. So I had to remove the command prefix to get it to work. Hogwarts Legacy library. So, I've got Tomb Raider, which is like a part of my like history on YouTube is using that. So we're going to do the benchmark on that first. This is the Game of the Year edition. No, yeah, Tomb Raider Game of the Year edition, and then we're going to go with the default options. So we're just going to no, we don't want Fallout yet. So we've got double buffer, high quality. You can see all that there. Feel free to pause. And then we've got the high quality preset, and then we're going to just check out the in-game benchmark once it loads. And while that's loading, I can tell you a little bit of how I got this set up. So basically I installed Lutris and then launched, and then launching the Epic Games Launcher with Wine via Lutris, then launching the games via the Epic Games Store, via Wine, via Lutris, and it seems to give fluid performance and GPU acceleration on every game. Let's just watch Laura do her thing. So, as you can see, we've got minimum FPS of 56.2, max of 63.5, average of 59.8. So I'm hopefully going to be able to do this in one take. If we switch back out to Rise of the Tomb Raider next. So we'll go Rise of the Tomb Raider next, which I've got installed. I believe that is also Rise of the Tomb Raider, the 20th anniversary edition. So we're going to try and flow this through in one take. You might have seen it chopped up, but I'm trying to do them all in one go. Right, and then options. We're going to go to, it's given us, we don't want DirectX 12 on this card because it doesn't really help. It's given us high settings, 4x anisotropic. So feel free to again pause and see what we've got here. We're going to jump in and see if there's an in-game benchmark, which I believe there is. Once we've found our way to the in-game benchmark, I'm going to pause the video and then come back with the results. So, start benchmark. So I should pause and then be back with the results. So, these are our results on high settings. So, we've got 30.83. Basically, you can see the average is 23.20. So that's not great performance out of the T430 and RX 480. So ideally, you want to be probably running this game up medium. So I'm just going to quickly run that again, and then just be back with the results. Okay, so we've got just under 30 frames per second. So depending which area of the game you're playing, you might need to do a few little tweaks. I'm not going to do another pass with it because you can probably adjust like texture settings or just one little thing, or I would imagine if you put on, for example, took down the shadow quality, or take the level of detail down from high to medium, which it should be on medium settings, thinking about it, like that would probably boost the performance significantly, and get you over that 30 frames per second sort of threshold. So I'm going to figure out how to quit this game, which I can't. There we go, quit game, and be back. Should we roll through? Yeah, let's roll through. Let's just roll through Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So I'm going to start Shadow of the Tomb Raider straight away off the bat with medium-low settings. Just because you have to bear in mind this CPU is 3rd gen, right? 3rd gen i7. Not only that, the graphics card's about 8 years old. Oh, it's giving us DirectX 12 this time. Maybe that'll make a difference. Maybe it won't. VSync off is what we want. On medium. Okay. So DirectX 12 might have helped in that other game actually, because this is a DirectX 12 compatible card. But the point is, like, the performance we're getting out of this via an eGPU with limited PCI bandwidth on a laptop from 2012 with a GPU from like 2014, and we're still able to run these relatively hardcore AAA titles, granted from a bit of an older generation, although Shadow of the Tomb Raider is relatively recent. I'm still impressed with that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm still pleased with the fact that you can do that, especially on Linux, especially with the god awful faff I've had trying to get Linux to run efficiently on this system before. All hail the mighty PopOs. I'm going to pause and be back. Sorry, I was going off on a rant. I'll be back when the game's loaded. So here's a bizarre twist that's really irritating. Tomb Raider servers are currently unavailable, please try again later. So, what? I just can't play this game unless the servers are available. Well, that could be a Lutris wine Linux compatibility thing that is the issue, but that's a bit frustrating. So the other well, yeah, Shadow of the Tomb Raider apparently is completely inaccessible from PopOs on the Linux with T430. What else do we have? We've got Fallout Game of the Year and Fallout New Vegas. Can't be bothered to go through the intro of Fallout 3 Game of the Year edition, so I'm going to boot into, for the final game, I'm going to boot into a little bit of Fallout New Vegas just to show you how it performs. So if we click default, it will detect medium quality. We're going to bump her up to 1080p, check the advanced settings, texture quality medium. That should give us a nice fluid experience. What is that? VSync off as well. Is there an option to show frames per second in here? Of course there isn't. That would be too bloody convenient. So let's see how fluid it looks, at least see how it looks. It's a 2010 game, so this computer should smash it. But on higher settings than you would have played it in 2010, thankfully. I'm running on Linux. So, as I mentioned before, we're running a Windows game via the Epic Games Launcher, via Lutris, via Wine. So the fact that all this works so fluidly is just a game changer. I'm still really pleased with it, do you know what I mean? Oh, come on, get into the game already. Fallout New Vegas, continue, eh? Yeah. So when I played this before, it just looks completely fluid to me. So let's just make some bad decisions here in a bit. And then let's see, can we go outside? No, not yet. We've got to faff around with this idiot. But yeah, basically, it's completely fluid. I'm not seeing any stutters. It looks great. Let's throw this book by clicking the right stick. Bring this man a book. Here, look, I brought you a book. Slap him in the head with it. Put it on his head. No, put it on his head. Let's put it on his head. Oh, I stole the book by accident. Anyway, yeah, so it works perfectly. I've no idea what frame rate but it visibly is absolutely fine. That's the last of the games testing. Now, in regards to what else to show, there's not much for me to show really. So all I wanted to do was this part 3 gaming setup and get some distro of Linux working efficiently with gaming, and I think I've been able to do that, so I might do a little outro, but for now I'm extremely pleased with the performance. Frustrated I couldn't get Garuda Linux working, because that was actually like excellent little system that I had on the go, but it is what it is. Like, you can't win them all, and ultimately I don't know Arch well enough to be able to replicate the eGPU. I couldn't even find the eGPU switcher script available in any way, shape or form in an Arch version, so it wouldn't have been viable. So let's go to the outro. I'll see you in the outro. So, conclusion time. T430 with eGPU, perfectly viable with Linux, as I'm sure many of you are already aware, that just running Linux on an eGPU, on T430, very efficient way to go, especially when it's upgraded to all high heck, like I've done. It's a very viable machine. Now, the links will be in the description for the eGPU switcher setup. I would recommend looking into that if you intend to use an eGPU with this device, which is the point of this video, because it was completely unusable in its default state. So yeah, go and get that script and get it running, get it installed if you're using an eGPU with your system. A couple of things to mention is I installed the standard version of PopOs, but if you're installing with an NVIDIA GPU in your eGPU, caddy or dock or whatever, you're going to need the NVIDIA version to have compatibility for drivers. What else can I say? Yeah, it works perfectly. I should be keeping this install and this setup for quite some time. I'm going to daily drive it. I've got a 500 gig hard drive that's got all my files and documents for Windows 10 that's going to be swapped out with the batocera drive, which is a standalone boot anyway, so I should be using this quite a bit. And probably not daily driving it. Like, honestly, I'm a Windows chump. Like, I need Windows for most of the things I do. So video editing, gaming and music production, all kind of I'm stuck with the Windows ecosystem for now, unless I go to Mac, which is the only other option to me, so I'm sticking with that for now. But this device will retain its PopOs install, and you'll probably see lots of stuff in it over the coming weeks. Sorry that I've been so remiss in my schedule. I've not been very well. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Please like, subscribe, share it with anyone that might find it interesting. If there's things I've missed, if there's inaccuracies, so on and so forth, please just type them down in the comments, because it always helps me improve the quality of my videos. Thanks for watching. I've been TechDave. Peace.